Welcome everybody, this is your Strategy Wolf and welcome to my new Let's Play project on this channel. And as I announced already beforehand, we are going to play Victoria 3. So yeah, welcome. This is not a gameplay episode yet because there's a lot to talk about from my point of view. What I wanted to talk to you and announce who we're gonna play, how we're gonna play and what the target of the game is. So yeah, and actually, yeah, probably if you were smart enough to read the title of this video, you might have noticed, no, we're not playing New South Wales, we are playing Japan. We're starting with the Japanese Shogunate. And yeah, actually, so this was in my head for a long time, to be honest, because I was traveling last September. I was traveling Eastern Asia. I never went to Japan in my life, actually, but I traveled Korea with my wife, who is Korean heritage. So it was a wonderful experience in general. And it started for me also kind of a more interest in the Eastern Asian history, since it's a part of world history that we were saying, like in the West, we don't teach that much, I feel like. So for me, it was very interesting to dig in a little bit more. And since I was traveling and Victoria 3 was already on the horizon, this was one of the first ideas I had in my mind after informing myself about it, that I would play Victoria 3 on a YouTube channel. And here we are. Now I'm after starting off with Strategic Command, we are finally here at the point that represents my, yeah, let's say, gaming history a lot, since all the Paradox interactive titles have been always part of my gaming for the last 10 years and so on. So yeah, I'm really happy that we can dig in a little bit together into Victoria 3. I haven't been playing Victoria 2, to be honest, so I actually skipped it. But I played a lot of Victoria 1 when I was younger. It actually was, for me, also one of the first Victoria, the Paradox games, where I went a little bit deeper in. So yeah, we played a lot of multiplayer back in the day. For whatever reason, I kind of skipped Victoria 2, and just in the last years I kind of got more and more interest in it. However, then there was already Victoria 3 on the horizon, so at some point I decided, well, I'm gonna wait for it, and it came out last October. I kind of think it's one of the best Paradox releases, like vanilla releases from the state it came out so far. So I'm quite happy. Of course, there's lots of stuff to fill in, and I'm pretty sure, and yeah, they announced it kind of, there's going to be tons of DLCs and stuff around to even expand it to a very nice state. However, now patch 1.2, where we are right now, is already quite nice, and I'm also playing with a mod I'm going to talk about later a bit more. And yeah, that enriches the game for me even more. Alright, like I said before, this is not going to be a gameplay episode, so if you're really just interested in the Victoria gameplay, then I'm happy if you skip to the next video where I start playing. Otherwise, please stay tuned. I mean, this one I'm gonna first of all give you a short overview of the history and the context of Japan in 1836, where we right now, to give you kind of an impression that maybe an update or like just a summary that we know where we are, how Japan continued historically speaking afterwards, and like in our game time. And yeah, then we're gonna talk about what we are going to do. Or actually, we'll talk about the mod first, that I give you some insights, what the mod is going to change in comparison to vanilla. Give it like some kind of heads up. It's not a conversion mod or anything, just things are being adjusted for a more, from my point of view, immersive feeling of play. And lastly, we're going to talk about our in-game targets, house rules, and so on, what I'm trying to do with this one. All right, so let's start talking about the Japanese history for a bit. So yeah, please, when I do this, just to keep you updated, I don't claim to be an expert on Japanese history or East Asian history whatsoever. I just informed myself a lot about the old history. There's great stuff on YouTube, so I'm happy for you, like, just to check it out if you're interested. There's long documentations on the Japan in this 19th century, but also before. So this was actually for me my main source of information for beforehand. Yeah, apart from that, I studied this semester a seminar on the great game in the 19th century between Russia and Great Britain mainly. But as part of that, I had to prepare a talk about a scientific book that was it's called Empire Ascendant by Reese Here. I can highly recommend it. It's very nice to read as well if you're interested. And it's basically about the alliance of Great Britain and Japan in the end of the 19th century and the implications for the Russo-Japanese War. So I actually have also some kind of scientific knowledge already in the, but more on the late 19th century of Japan's history. So yeah, it's a good time to start this Let's Play, and I'm quite excited. So yeah, when talking already about the history, let's go in and yeah, let's start with the history of the prehistory. All right. Maybe let's read this tiny text here. Japanese shogunate. The strength of the ruling Tokugawa shogunate is failing, with famine and unrest spreading all across the country. The Edo period has lasted in Japan for over 200 years. Will it be able to last for 200 more? Potentially not. And what is the Edo period? What is the Tokugawa shogunate? So let's have a quick and brief look on the history of Japan. So we still have at this time a Japanese emperor or Tenno. Not here we see, instead we see the shogun. So in 1190, I think was what I found out, there was the basically up to in the end 1867 was the time of the Japanese shogunate, which was essentially the shogun was one of the local feudal lords of the so-called daimyos that had the military command and therefore the kind of the practical strength within Japan, whilst the emperor or the Tenno was basically just a puppet and trying to more symbolic figure than in the years before. This happened, like I said, it started in 1190. There are several times of different shogunates, so different families of the different daimyos took over the power. So for the last 200 years in this for this session here, starting in 1603, we have the so-called Tokugawa shogunate, ruled by the Tokugawa family, initialized by Tokugawa Ieyasu. But before we had others as well, and in between there were also several attempts to restrict the shogunate power again or bring more centralized power to the emperor. However, most of these uprisings, rebellions failed or were only short-lived. So yeah, since 1190 we have the shogunate system going on in Japan, having a feudal or like decentralized feudal state in a kind of way with the leadership of the shogun. What did happen? This is more or less what happened internally before this. So yeah, what happened in terms of foreign politics? So we have two Mongol invasions by the Kublai Khan in 1274 and 1281, when the Mongols came here. You remember also Genghis Khan and so on, and they took over Manchuria and Korea, or forced the Koreans to build ships for the Mongols. And both these massive invasions of the Chinese, Korean, Mongolese combined invasion forces were shattered, or I think there's like the divine wind that was in the end very essential to repel both of these invasions, which was one of the most let's say important events of medieval Japanese history. So mainly they're busy with themselves within Japan as well. 1543, they're being discovered by Portuguese explorers or traders that open up first contacts to the West, introduce firearms to Japan, and kind of spread a little bit of Christianity and so on. The contact to the Europeans was basically limited. There were trade and exchange with the Netherlands and Portuguese mainly in the beginning. However, the Japanese tried to stay amongst themselves still, and we're too far away for real bigger contact to the others, to the Western world. So one of their last attempts before this time we're actually in to expand the Japanese territories was the so-called Imjin War of 1592 to 1598, where the Japanese invaded Joseon, Korea, which was, at this point still is, was now it's a tributary to the Qing. Before it was a tributary state to the Ming. Yeah, basically the status you can see at the beginning of Europe Universalis, if you kind of know that one. This Imjin War, this is the Korean name of this war, where the Japanese invaded, and both land forces and sea was, yeah, an intense war, which was won by the Koreans in the end, due to their like still super famous leader Admiral G, up to this day kind of Korean national hero, and the so-called turtle ships that yeah, these kind of tanky or yeah, really strongly fortified ships had to defeat the Japanese. And after they're controlling the seas, the Koreans managed to expel the Japanese armies, which left them, yeah, took them back to Japan, and basically started off yeah, kind of a period of super strong or even growing isolation. And as I managed in 1603, we have Tokugawa Ieyasu, who established the Tokugawa Shogunate, so by his family, for the next 250 years roughly, in which time they constructed a new administrative center, the city called Edo, or nowadays Tokyo, which you will find here, in comparison to the former capital of Kyoto, which is, I think, this one. In game we will see the names of the cities better. So this was started, but at the same time they kind of restricted immigration, but also migration a lot. They restricted trade a lot, and only the Dutch, I think, had to some very limited extent the possibility to trade, but it was very limited. The same to Korea and China. So it was a peaceful period, but at least in the outside. But yeah, it's kind of, yeah, was isolating Japan a lot from the outside of the world, and left it to the state where we are right now, where famine and unrest are spreading all across the country. So yeah, but it's called the Edo period, after the newly established town that later became Tokyo. So yeah, this is the point where we're right now, still in the old school shogunate, but this is probably going to change within this game. However, it's not going to be the same in the game, but I'm giving you a short outlook what happened in reality in the history of Japan. So there were attempts before from the outside to start trade with them. For example, also for the American industry, it was kind of interesting to have access to Japanese coal reserves and so on. So after failed first attempts, actually in 1853, the US-American Commodore Matthew Perry came with his kind of gunboat diplomacy and his gunboats to the Edo harbor, to the Tokyo harbor, and in the end essentially forced the Japanese to open up their society or their trade law, their and therefore open up their entire country, which was, after some short thinking, undertaken by I think the predecessor to Meiji, Emperor Meiji. So I will have to check this out. I'll put it to you in the comments. And yeah, which led to the opening, led to yeah, a lot of contracts, so some called the uneven contracts, so quite of one-sided trade contracts with mainly the European powers and the US, so France, England, Russia and US at the beginning, but also Prussia and Austria-Hungary followed too. Which was a little bit inspired also by the uneven contracts that were imposed upon the Qing after the Opium Wars and so on. However, this changed quickly, since with this yeah, new opening, these new ideas and new trade incoming, there was like strong tendencies in the Japanese society and leadership to transform the country to a modernized country with a Japanese spirit but Western technology. So yeah, it's the entire country in itself, like a lot of the forces within the country started this modernization process, which yeah, led to some kind of unrest or even like a civil war in between the modernization and traditional forces that were more like supporters of the daimyo and the shogunate, versus like a modernizing force mainly led by the emperor. Which led to a small civil war, probably not even that small, civil war in 1868, where the British supported imperials were fighting the shogunate supporting daimyos supported by France. in which basically the Imperials won and made, in the end, as an aftermath, Japan to the Japan not that we know today, but that we saw by the end of the 19th century. So the Empire of Japan, a centralized Japanese state with the capital of Tokyo or Edo. Exactly. Yeah, this is a long process, and as again, even after that process, there were different opinions apparently in the Japanese society to which extent you should modernize or not, which led to further uprisings and especially of the old samurai class that felt neglected and lost a little bit of their powers. For me, actually, maybe you can remember the movie, The Last Samurai. I haven't seen it in a long time. I can't relate how historically accurate it is, probably not that much. However, for me, this was the first contact with these kind of incidents and made me a little bit aware of this part of Japanese history. So actually, I would like to have a rewatch. Maybe I'm going to watch it soon and then let you know what I think now after knowing a little bit more. So this led to further rebellions and so on, which in the end, got crushed, and the modernization part of the history was implied really hard on the shogunate, or sorry, not the shogunate anymore, the Empire of Japan, which in 1889 finally also got the so-called Meiji Constitution, which is made it basically a constitutional monarchy after the model of Prussia and Great Britain, which gave even voting rights to a very limited number of Japanese citizens, not making it a democracy at all, but let's say making it a modern state at least, since also civil law and so on, into following the German civil law, which followed the Code Napoleon and so on, was introduced. They hired military advisors from Prussia for their army, from Great Britain for their fleet. They sent students all over to the universities of Europe and North America to educate Japan, and thereby really transformed it a lot in the entire society, which, like as mentioned before, never came without any big problems or without unrest. But it was a massive shift. For example, one thing is that at this point where we're starting, Japan is mainly a Buddhist country, but which changes in the 19th century to, apart from the tiny Christian influences, they kind of turned to Shintoism, and which we're going to see in this game as well. While Shintoism is also close to Buddhism, it's a more Japanese version and has different rules. I don't want to go into the theology too much because actually I don't know. Maybe we do a special episode at some point when we talk about Shintoism, but just to let you know. Just one example that I find very impressive, or something that I didn't know also before informing myself more, was that basically Japan in the night before this transformation as a Buddhist country was vegetarian, or the people were eating mainly fish and vegetables. And with the introduction of the modernization, they even kind of forced a top-down new nutrition or diet upon the people, so they should eat meat like the Westerners. Kind of funny when you think, because I think even now when you look at numbers, Japan has still way lower meat consumption per person now up to date. But when you think about these days where all these fancy steaks and so on come from Japan, the Kobe beef and so on, how people admire this. And it's quite new still. Can be also seen, for example, when we talk already about food. It's one of my other big hobbies. When we can see the Japanese tonkatsu, this kind of fried breaded piece of pork that's crunchy and so on. Is no coincidence that it looks very similar to a Wiener Schnitzel, or I just found in the internet. I thought it was done after Viennese Schnitzel, but I mean it's the same. It's like in French, I think côtelette de veau, something like this. However, this cuisine came in Japan with the influence of Western powers, and it's not a coincidence. It looks very similar. It's kind of remodeling it a little bit. So much about the tonkatsu. So but as you can imagine, this was a massive shift within the society, which changed the minds and so on of the people heavily. And with this new mindset and this kind of more Western thinking, they also, by the end of the 19th century, played more and more their, let's say, imperial role and started to behave as a great power, since the Japanese industry also, skyrocketed very hard, or the growth was immense. So, which brought them in a position where they can exert some strength. And yeah, so I wanted to just talk quickly about some things that were up. So, because I mentioned already, I had the knowledge on the treaty with the British. So basically, they had a first uneven friendship treaty. It was one of the uneven treaties in 1854. However, in 1894, they made a treaty of commerce and navigation with the British, which was the first even contract with a European power, which allowed them basically a similar rights in trading, and where they were also aligning their interest in Asia. This further cooperation with the Brits led in the end also to the Anglo-Japanese alliance of 1902, which was a formal military alliance to help each other in case they're fighting two other great powers. The background of this was basically for Britain, there was big interest to secure India, basically due to a Japanese army from a Russian threat in the end. The same way around, Japan was threatened potentially by Russia or other powers in the area, whilst Britain also could withdraw its main fleets to Europe to kind of counter the growing fleet of the German Empire. So these were basically the underlying strategic reasons for this. For Japan also, let's go a little back in history for some time, so to understand Japan also a little bit better. So in 1894, 1895, Japan was fighting the Qing China in this area here to basically fight over the influence in Korea, because they had contracts about it, and then they said that China, when they would send troops, I think, to support some Korean rebellion or to put some Korean rebellion down, Japan interpreted this as a violation of the treaty, so they declared war upon the Qing, and they, with the new Prussian military education, new weapons, and the British-inspired fleet, they were able to defeat them quite heavily, occupying here the Liaodong Peninsula, where we have Port Arthur here at the end. Going into Korea, taking Formosa, so nowadays Taiwan, and actually they wanted to keep Taiwan as well as here the Liaodong Peninsula and other parts. However, there was the intervention of Shimonoseki, where Russia, France, and Germany, the German Empire, together vetoed this and told Japan, guys, stand down a little bit, don't be too greedy, otherwise we might intervene. Which led to only a partial success, that where Japan only got Taiwan, and they, for example, had to withdraw here from the Liaodong Peninsula entirely. So, which was taken by Russia a few years later, here Port Arthur and so on, and brings us already to the next important. That's one of the reasons why they signed up with Great Britain, because they kind of felt betrayed by the European powers, and they wanted to have some diplomatic or even military support by other European power to feel more respected and to not have this kind of situation reoccurring, that they have their so well-earned, deserved winnings. I'm just talking from a Japanese perspective of the time. That they had to lose them again because of the intervention of Europeans. So this was one of the reasons why to ally with the Brits. In 1900, there was the Boxer Rebellion in China, where 8 nations from Europe and including Japan intervened and secured their interests. Basically, really, it's like a very interesting time frame for the Chinese history. Or up to date, I think, plays a big role, where the Chinese still look back to this kind of humiliation by the West. And followed by, in the end, then after I told you that Russia took here Port Arthur and so on, and also threatened kind of to exert its own influence over Korea, in the end led to the Russia-Japanese War of 1904-1905, where Japan managed to defeat a Western power in 200-300 years, kind of, and got in the end the Outer Manchuria, which the control over Korea, and here the parts of the north, I think, from Russia, which led in Russia to the first revolution. So it was a major and really relevant war. We can talk about this for longer, but for the moment it would be too much in depth. I still highly recommend you to inform yourself about it if you haven't really heard about it. It's kind of a predecessor to World War I and II in terms of technology and so on. So very fascinating in terms of history. All right. Well, this was a very short and brief overview. So what happened in reality? I hope I didn't forget anything or misinterpreted anything. So please, if I made any errors or if you know something else to add on, which is what you find really important, let me know, write it in the comments so we can learn a little together here. Which brings me, after this short history wrap up, brings me to the point where I want to talk a little bit about the game or what we are going to do. First off, let's start off with let's start off with the mod that I'm playing. So I'm playing with Seine Majestät's Kleider multiplayer mod, which is a modification from my friend Max, who's we've been playing a couple of multiplayer rounds in Victoria 3 together since the game came out in October, and I feel like he has a very good, he studies politics and some history on the side, so he has also deep interest in the right depiction of an immersive situation, and wanted to correct, let's say, some things that we found not that great, and the vanilla base came and included it in this very nice mod, which doesn't feel so much difference, but it makes a lot of things nicer. To be honest, I never played vanilla 1.2 so far, so I can't really tell, because he also said that 1.2 improved already a lot. But yeah, that's the state. And what are we doing in this mod, or what does the mod mainly do for us? It kind of slows down tech construction in general, so make the game a little bit slower. However, it increases the tech spread bonus, so basically, if you're like a small power with not so much tech, but the big ones, so the great powers are attacking a lot, you will also get it via the spreading. However, researching takes more time, so I think even as a great power, you would have to kind of focus and decide on what you want to research, so it's not a given thing that you can finish the tech trees by the end of the game easily, like which was the case in vanilla. So this is one of the things. Then the big thing is a workover of the entire law. So they have somehow some new buffs and nerfs to make them a little bit more balanced, to not always give one meter way to go. Also the political, how they feel like politically is being changed. So if missing or active laws will move pops more towards leaning towards an interest group or not. This is, for example, something, parliamentary republics will tend to have several parties, presidential republics will tend to have two. There's multiculturalism can only be taken in Latin America, since this was like, for me, also kind of a vanilla meta, which was a little bit too, I don't know, easy. For example, here we're probably going the exactly different route, at least of the beginning of the game. We're going to go for ethno state, which gives some population growth instead. So there's even some advantages also for quite conservative playstyles. So I think that's a little nicer and balanced, but we'll see more. Apart from this, there's like options for Austria or the Ottomans to handle the Balkans or the minorities there. Then there's, I think, some more buffs for newly unified states. Also Japan gets one. In general, for us, the most relevant changes for Japan are that we can, with a decision, get the acceptance, the international ones, the recognition, which normally needs to be done with a war, or some foreign power needs to ask you to do that. However, in this case, if you have a very good relation and an alliance with another great power, you could do this by decision, which I find good, because it also excludes, let's say, maybe you have to wait the entire game before the AI decides to do so. So I find it nice that it's in there. And what else? We are kind of going to be a little bit politically streamlined. since most of the interest groups will follow the Hanbatsu at some point when we start the modernization, which is basically the modernist, the industrial military part or path to go, which makes it at some point easier to just follow this path. But in the end, if we want to go for, let's say, more a multicultural or other different democratic society, this will make it way harder, I think. Yeah. So actually, I put you a mod description, the link to the mod, which is nice. There's in German and English. There's very good explanations, and yeah, check it out. But if you have questions, please let me know. Comment here also, because me and Max were also thinking about doing maybe a little bit of an interview on where he can present the mod a little bit to the audience, and where I could ask him questions that you're going to collect over the time. So what are we going to do? We're playing Japan. Is it? Yeah, I know I want to do some rough things, okay? You know, some people would say we're going to do world conquest or some stuff like this. That's just not my thing. I try to behave or gonna slow play this, so I'm gonna play let's say in an immersive style, see what happens in the world and react maybe a little bit to that, and not just push as hard as I can for the reformation, the restoration here or anything, just to push and be super speedy and do the best outcome in the end. I want to have still a very nice and immersive campaign, so don't expect me to like power gaming here or to see the best of Victoria 3 gameplay. However, still, especially if you're a new player, also you can definitely learn from these videos that I'm going to publish, because I'll take my time, have some looks here and there, and yeah, even if you have questions, you can always comment that, so maybe you can check out something together, because I'm for sure I'm okay. I know how the game works. I can run it very nicely, but it's not like I'm the full pro in Victoria. So this is what I'm gonna do. I also don't want to do exploits that are like mainly cheesy, where you know already, this is not meant to be, or this is not how history would have happened. So this is something I want to do. What was my plan? I think we have 3 to 4 phases. Probably we start off playing a little bit more longer as the Shogunate, doing a little bit of this, let's say, conservative build up, getting our industry ready or our economy slowly ready. Then we'll have the restoration phase, where we probably change to Imperial Japan, or where our industrialization kicks off, potentially, where we start also rearming and so on. Followed by probably an imperialistic phase, where we will follow the historical path of, I guess Korea and Manchuria are going to be interesting targets, or in general the expansion of Japanese influence. But it might be an interesting task also to say, let's kick out all Europeans out of Asia, for example here the Philippines, the Netherlands, to prevent them from taking here Vietnam or something. It's not a dogmatic approach. That's something I can imagine that would be very interesting. So this is what might be the phase, and this might be followed by a phase 4, where this depends heavily on how far we came before. We might design our pan-Asiatic welfare state, happy state, or which could be very difficult with this Hanbatsu political development that I said, or we drive, like, if depending on the situation and the other players in the area, we drift like kind of historically towards fascism. But I hope we can maybe do the nice way after. First imperialistic, then nice. Let's see. All right. And last, one thing I want to do is, I'm not setting, actually I don't want to set up too many house rules. However, maybe if some develop, I will add them to my ideas during the game. There's one that I want to test right away, which is basically regarding the colonization, since you need the colonization institutions, and basically once you have colonization, I could also send a colonizer over here to Africa, which I find a little bit absurd. By the way, note, this is like gonna change. We're gonna play with the vanilla setup of Africa here in the mod. There's the option to have Africa completely uncolonized or uncivilized, decentralized. So all of the states that normally are like centralized in the vanilla game are also decentralized. But in our case, it's gonna be normal, as you might know it. However, yeah, I don't want to just go ahead and start colonizing in Africa. That doesn't really make sense for me, and it's like not the Japanese way. So I have my house rule. I will only colonize Sakhalin and here Hokkaido, I think is this, in the north, on the Kuril Islands with the institution power 1. If we get up to power 2, I think from my point of view it's okay for me if we consider colonizing here Micronesia or like in general Pacific belongings. And only if we are at institution 3 or higher, I'd be considering doing something else, for example in Africa, but which is not necessarily a target. However, if we are like imperialistic, we have the maybe an access here to East Africa, why not? But it's not a declared goal. Thank you for staying tuned and watching. If you watched the entirety of this video, I also will definitely add some timestamps so it's easier for you guys to navigate. And yeah, we are going to kick off soon with the first episode. Basically, I'm uploading them at the same time where we're gonna start and see the first years of this match, of this game. Just organizational. Yeah, as you know, and you might have observed, since I'm still very new and I'm doing this not professionally, I can't guarantee you a certain upload stream or upload train, but I will try to provide at least two episodes a week, if not 3, and I think I'm going to produce like half-hourly episodes. Yeah, let's see how this develops, how we feel with that, and what the feedback is. So this is something just for the organizational side. All right. So yeah, then thank you for watching. I hope you're on board with me. Already go to the second video immediately to start the real gameplay. Give me a like and leave me a subscription if you don't want to miss the new episodes that are outcoming. If you haven't seen the other projects on my channel, I'm happy for you if you go check it out. And for example, my running strategic command campaign, which is a totally different game. And apart from that, thank you for this already. And then see you in the first episode together. Bye, your Strategy Wolf.